Hey guys, and welcome to lesson 1. So today we're going to be talking about the most basic Japanese sentence structure. In English this would be something like X is Y, okay? So in Japanese this looks like X wa Y desu. Now, the first thing to note is that Japanese sentences are structured very differently than English ones. For example, the verb always comes at the end of a sentence in Japanese. Now, in my experience both learning Japanese and teaching it to many students, I think this is probably one of the biggest obstacles between you and eventually speaking Japanese fluently. And that's because in addition to sort of learning vocabulary and just basic grammatical stuff, you have to also assimilate this Japanese syntax into your brain, in order to start navigating Japanese sentences fluidly. But don't worry, it's really not such a big deal. It's something that if you tackle it the right way and if you have the right approach, then you can actually learn to do this fairly quickly. And of course, as you progress, you'll just be constantly reinforcing your knowledge of Japanese sentences. But if you are afraid of it and you just sort of try to avoid it, like many students do, either consciously or subconsciously, it can really become a big issue later on. So that's why we're going to tackle that in the very first lesson. So my goal today is that you have a clear understanding of basic Japanese sentence structure, so that every lesson after this you will be reinforcing that understanding, and I promise you're going to arrive at that level where you can form sentences fluidly yourself much more quickly. So the first thing I want to tell you very quickly is that in this little structure, X wa Y desu, this wa is something called a topic marker. It's a particle. Okay, in Japanese there's a group of words called particles that have a special function. I want you to ignore that in this lesson, okay? Just trust me. Now the reason is that in my experience teaching students, rather than trying to give some arbitrary grammar explanation to something you've never even seen before, which ends up confusing you and makes you just run, I find it's far more effective to give you examples where you can actually see this grammatical component working in real context, and later I will explain it to you and it's going to make a lot more sense. So please ignore wa for today. Okay, so for Japanese sentences, the very first thing you need to know is the word desu. Now desu is technically something called a copula, but you don't need to know that. So you can think of desu as the verb to be. Okay, so in sentences like I am, it is, he is, we are, that to be verb is desu. And as we said, that has to come at the very end of the sentence. So there's something I want to show you both about how this works and also how Japanese is spoken. To do that, I'm going to give you 3 example sentences. The first one is, I am a student. Okay? So in Japanese, this could be translated as gakusei desu. Gakusei is student. Desu, I am. Okay. The next sentence is onna no hito desu. She is a woman. Onna no hito, woman. Desu, she is. The final sentence is 10時です. It is 10 o'clock. 10時, 10 o'clock. Desu, it is. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hold on, desu translated as I am, she is, and it is. Well yes, and that's because in these Japanese sentences there's actually no subject. And this is what I meant when I said I want to show you something about how Japanese is actually spoken. So in Japanese, when the subject is obvious, so when it's clear who or what we're talking about, they very often will just omit it from the sentence altogether. So a really important tip when you're starting Japanese is to know that you're gonna have to embrace ambiguity and context, because Japanese is a language that is heavily context-based. So it's very ambiguous much of the time, and you have to sort of use context clues, right, to figure out who or what we're talking about. And this can get quite complex. However, I want to encourage you to embrace that, okay? Because this is one of the more beautiful things about Japanese, right? So when you're speaking and listening to Japanese, or when you're reading and writing it, it's amazing because there's so much sort of perception on your part that is involved, right? You're constantly looking for context clues and perceiving things that may just be explicitly stated in English, perhaps. And once again, rather than viewing that as an obstacle, it's something to be relished, I think, because it's part of what makes speaking and reading Japanese such a different experience, and it's one of my favorite things. Japanese is very nuanced, right? There's so many little tiny grammatical things you can add that don't really have a translation in English, but they do add nuance, right? So just to say, don't be discouraged by these more challenging aspects of learning Japanese, because they're also the most rewarding aspects. Okay, so back to our sentences. So what happens then if it's not clear who we're talking about, right? And we need to explicitly state, like, I am a student, okay? That's when we need our structure, X wa Y desu. So if I want to specify I am a student, it's going to be watashi wa gakusei desu. Watashi wa gakusei desu, okay? Watashi, I, gakusei, student, desu, am, okay? Next one. Let's say we have a friend whose name is Shizuka. Shizuka is a Japanese name for girls. So, Shizuka-san wa onna no hito desu. Right? So, Shizuka-san. San is a suffix that we put on names. Shizuka-san wa onna no hito desu. Okay. Shizuka. Onna no hito, woman, desu is. And then one more new sentence, because throughout all these videos and this whole series, I want to start to build a narrative, right? So the example sentences that I give you in each lesson and the vocabulary you learn, it's going to be thematic and related, so that if you do follow these all the way through, you'll actually be able to talk about things and start to build a deeper core of knowledge. So the last sentence I'm going to give you is senmon wa Nihongo desu. Okay, so senmon is speciality, specialization, or major, like in university. Senmon, major. Nihongo is the word for Japanese. Nihongo desu is, so my major is Japanese. Okay guys, thanks for watching. That's all for today. Now, really quickly, I want to thank you for watching the video and supporting. If you like this content and you're enjoying it, please do subscribe, and if you know anybody that is learning Japanese, I would love it if you would share this with them to just help me spread the word out and help more people. Now, the second thing is I have created a Patreon account. So a few of you guys have sent me messages suggesting that. I was nervous and hesitant to do it, but it is true that I do spend many hours making these videos for you guys, and this is sort of my job, teaching languages. So obviously all my content is going to continue to be free, but for those of you who would like to support me more, you can go to patreon.com/thelifeofrob, where you can donate anything from $1 upwards. Every donation is greatly appreciated, and honestly, it's kind of an honor that anybody would think to sort of give money to support my content. So thank you again for watching. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson.